Welcome to another fun painting tutorial. Today we are going to paint a brook trout. So after you've done this with the template, you would want to flip it over. This is still my original drawing, and then tape it down with some blue tape. And then just so it doesn't move, and trace. Don't worry about all the extra lines. Most of it is just like a little tiny guideline that help us to actually just see where to stop and where to add a few things or where to leave open. So even though it looks like there's a whole bunch of lines, you don't have to trace every single thing. So even with all these rocks, it's just kind of the idea. Don't forget the pins, the bottom. And these you can kind of just wing it a little bit. If you want to have, so I'm just going to really roughly trace it. If you want to use more of organic block effect, you can just trace on my lines. Or if you want to, so before you take off your tape, flip over to make sure you can see it. I am going to make a few of the lines just a little darker for you to easier follow along. If you want to use the organic kind of outline, leave the, this, or if you want to have more of a precise, you can definitely type out the edges. And I will show you in a moment what to do. I just kind of want to make sure that my lines are a little bit more visible. You don't have to do this step if you can see your lines. Lighter is always better, so you don't have so much pencil lines to deal with after you are done with your painting. So all I want to do is I just want to make sure that you can follow along easier. If you want to tape out an edge, use some washi tape or some painter's tape, and you can just tape it out. I think I'm going to leave mine kind of natural like this. I should have scooched it up. Maybe I'll just make it a little bit bigger on this side. So we can start painting the fish. Today, I think I want to start actually with the fish and not the background. Sometimes I like to do the background and then it's easier to see where the fish lines are. I think for today, I am going to start with the fish because I think there's definitely a few layers happening. I have a little strip so I can share with you how I mix some of my paint. I have my normal paint palette that's still, sometimes I clean it a little bit. It's a little messy. Just make more space over here. Okay. I have my water cup. I have my towel. And everything is like right here at the top, easy to use. And for his body, it's got a lot of spots. So we are just going to kind of wing it a little bit. I'm using my iPad to look at the original photo so I can just share with you. I haven't painted this, so I don't have a painted version to share with you. Let me just show you my iPad. I just quickly cropped it. Okay, so see how he is really spotted. So in watercolor, we will start with the light color and then come back and add the darker one because we cannot really do it the other way around. So my iPad is just off to the side so I can look at it. So you would want to need a yellow. My yellow is not even so bright yellow anymore. So you would want to have a yellow. Maybe clean your yellow or just wing it. Something kind of like this. Just like a nice yellow. And I'm going to make it a little bit more watery as I paint. So I'm going to dip as I go. It is always preferable to make it just a little bit lighter and more watery, and then you can come back and add more. I'm actually going to paint a really light layer on his mouth and even a tiny bit around his eye. But as I go, I add a little bit more water to just let that yellow be really soft. See if I can zoom in more. Hold on. And I try to paint a little faster so it doesn't dry stripy. And when I go down here, I dilute it a lot. So it's easier to blend. So that line that we traced is basically where the yellow and the orangey color is going to meet. So try not to paint over the fin that we traced over here, and go a little bit down to the bottom, all the way to his belly, and add water and just kind of fill it in. So that line will be helpful in a little bit. So we're not using it right now. We are basically painting everything in a very light yellow. I am even going into his back fin like this. And you can see this, it's not a solid yellow. You kind of want to see the watercolor effect happening. And then leave this little section white that we traced. And go on his fins, but also do not paint till the end. Just leave that space as white. So everything's got a light-ish layer of yellow. I'm going to make the top of my fin just a little bit more. And then just going to put my towel on this side so I don't bump my camera. Okay, and tap, 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 tap. We can kind of blend it. Now, it's not really wet. It's not shiny. I didn't use a lot of water. Over here, I can see there's a little bit of water piling up, but my body is kind of already sort of dry. So for the next color we need to mix is we have our yellow, and then I like yellow as my base. So I always have my puddle, and then I add a little bit more orange to that to get even a little bit more. Let me see. So start with yellow as your base, add orangey, maybe even a little bit of red. Oh yeah, and get a red color that kind of looks like this. So you can definitely feel and see there's a yellow tint, but it's not just a very strong orangey yellow. It's definitely have that yellow tint. And so now we are carefully going to paint underneath this little white section. And I'm going to paint, I'm going to go up, and I'm going to paint all the way to that pencil line. All the way down to the belly. When I get to the back, I'm going to go and make a really tiny line, kind of like this. And then see, don't go over this pencil line that we traced. Oh yeah, you can see over here, my paint is a little bit more wet. And I'm just going to add the tail. It's all at the moment just one color. I want to say it's like the orangey color. And then what I do is I clean my brush. I want to touch my towel, And then I want to, so my brush is clean. I want to drag it on the pencil line. And I want to see if I can have more or less kind of a yellow to orangey without having that harsh line. You can even come back with some yellow and then just like pull it over there and maybe smooch it up a little bit. So, and make sure you clean your brush every single time and then touch your towel. The reason I like to touch my towel is so I don't, when I start painting, drop a big drop of water. Okay, so I'm gonna go like this. And I kind of like how that looks. We can also do the little tap, tap, taps instead of making a line. I'm gonna drag my brush alongside this edge. And so wait for it to dry. Then I am going to, so now we have the yellow, we have the orange, and now I'm going to use the same color I just had, and I am adding some purple to that. So use exactly the same color and start with adding small amounts of purple. I'm trying to show you, I mix it just right over here. So I'm getting some blue, oranges, reds, yellows, and then I add a small amount of purple. Try not to have a wet brush when you mix, too wet brush when you mix your color. So it's a little easier to just control a smaller puddle, I want to say. So add purple. I should actually add it here. Add purple. And you will see the purple, orangey, red color makes this pretty shadow color, I'm going to call it. Use that color and kind of outline his belly. Oh, I should have painted these fins. Okay, we'll do it now. And go all the way to the back. Just kind of outline. I like to do it a little bit sketchy versus a very hard, heavy line. I am going to go like this and make a top line. I'm going to touch my water cup, and now I'm going to have my brush more with an angle, and I'm going to see if I can just bring a few fin kind of ideas like this. I clean, I touch my towel, and I come back and I see if I can soften those lines a little bit, stripy-ish. And then I may have to just let that dry, right? So sometimes just let it dry. I'm going to use the same technique that I used for the orange and the yellow. And I'm just dragging my brush along a few times to get it really flowy. So my bottom stays dark, but I kind of dilute it a little bit inside my orange. You can even come back with some of the dark color again, and so outline from the bottom. Then maybe get a little bit of your orangey, yellow, reddish color. Maybe mix it on a different spot. And then I forgot a little bit about these guys, so just fill them in. So on top of your yellow layer, you just want to add a little bit red. Oh, it's too wet, it's going to be too hard. Do make sure that your purple line is not too wet, because then it will just flow inside your fin. And we want to see something like this. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . I'm gonna add a little bit of that fin here. And maybe a little bit underneath. So check to see where you think you may need to add some of the color. Go back to your back fin. Maybe now it's dry enough for you to come back and you just want to add more stripy. Think of how the texture of fins. So maybe you want to come back and just give a few stripy outlines. And then don't ever leave it just like that. If you don't want to, if you don't plan it, like, you know, come back, blend it out. So don't ever leave your lines too long, because once they dry, it's a little bit tricky to get rid of them. And play around with your purple color and your oranges, especially close to the end of his fin. You want to have it a little darker. So we're going to tap, 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 tap. I don't always try, like to just give like a harsh outline, especially when I know this could be one of my final layers. So by tapping, it kind of blends really cool. And then especially towards the end of the tail, the fin. All right, so I'm going to let that dry and see what it looks like. I kind of like that I can already see some of the texture happening. And then don't fuss. That is, I think, the hardest part for us, is not to fuss. Get a little bit of this purple color again, the purple, orange, red, and make sure where it's touching the little side fins, you want to make sure that line is nice and crisp, and then come back where it's touching the white and just give like a tiny bit of a shadow color right there. And the same over here. So where the white is the tip, and so you just want to come back and outline a little bit here. So you want to see kind of the dark area, the lighter area, the dark area, and then it's going to be white. And I would trace this all the way till the end. Take the same purple color, so you do this kind of 3 times. So 1, 2, and then at the top of this little fin, that's really towards the side and like facing us, you want to do the same with the top. And I like to use my brush kind of like a pencil, so it's a little bit more coloring. I quickly are going to lift up just so you can see a little bit better what just happened. Okay, so see how my tail fin is drying like that? I like it. The 2 bottom fins, I have the red with the purple line, and you can see where the white will be. And then you see this little fin that's facing us. It's just got like an outline of the purple on the top. Okay, now we're going to do the same with, I'm going to stick kind of with this purple color. I think it looks really pretty with my fish. So I'm going to make it a little bit more purple. I'm going to just make it a little watery and add more orange and more purple. And then, so you know what color that will make. But then I am also going to add a little bit of a darker blue. And maybe I will show you now what it will look like. And then maybe add a bit of brown. So let me just tell you the colors again. It will be, let me just see if I like the color. Oh, I love it. Okay, so it's kind of like a purple. If I dilute it, it's easier for you to kind of see. Let me just get a little bit more brown in there. Oh yeah, this is like a perfect color. So it is the orange color you want to add. And this is kind of the blue that I used. It's a dark navy blue. And then this is kind of the brown that I used, my Van Dyke brown. And with this mixture, if you add the blue and the brown, you will get something that kind of looks like this. This one is a little bit too purple, so don't use this one. This one is, yes. Okay, so I can keep it like this so you can see. So with this one, we are now going to come around his on the top, and we're going to come back and make like little spots. So I am going to sort of kind of outline it like this, and then clean my brush, touch my towel, and then I'm going to come and do little polka dots, but I'm going to let them touch here and there. So when I drop in color, you will see they are kind of sort of connected. And do polka dots. Try not to make a specific pattern like this. Try to go a little bit all over the place. When you follow the body of your fish, and so there's no line, you just have to kind of follow the curve. Just go a little bit darker, closer together. Touch your water cup, dilute it a little bit, pull it out, leave a few of the yellow spots. His body is very spotted. Go back in the color, and you want to do this all the way to his tail. I, of course, ran out of that specific color, so I'm just quickly mixing more. Try it, hopefully it's the same. Do a little bit more. Make sure you are blending them by letting them flow a little bit. Remember, it looks really dark when I started painting, but it always dries a little bit lighter. So even if it looks really dark, you can also take your towel and like suck up a little bit of the darkness if you feel it is a little bit too much. But then also just go and repeat that color. So just go everywhere on the body. Maybe go back to your first layer, add a little bit. The spot is kind of just towards his nose, not really on his cheeks. I just like to give a little outline so it doesn't look so uneven, and then fill it in with spots. Remember to touch your water cup and then touch them again, so some of them are a little bit more flowy. And just repeat some of that color. Go a little bit more spotty. Go all the way to the end. You just keep like a little line to end the spottiness for the tail. And keep on going. Closer to the bottom, you can have a few less, so don't make them too spotty, and maybe dilute them a little bit. And then let it dry and see how it dries. To this top fin, we want to leave like a small edge, kind of like I don't even know, like a 1/4 inch, and then a 1/2 inch you want to spotty all the way to where the fin is touching the body like this. And then I'm just going to mix a little bit more paint because of course I'm out. Before you start painting, just always do a tiny check to see if your colors are the same next to your spot that you mix. It's just a little, helpful. So I'm busy on this top one. I want to do a few little spots. And then I'm going to stop kind of like that. And I want to do more stripy. So still the dot effect, but I want to do a little bit more of a pattern. And then on the edge, I also just want to do a few little stripy. So you can definitely see the pattern. And remember, we're going to do the background. So even if it feels like you are not seeing it well, just hold on. We're not done. This tiny little fin that's at the back, it looks like a little bump. I'm just going to do, it is so small. So even if you just do a few little lines like this, you may see it. Maybe here at the top, you want to have a little bit more of a solid line and then immediately come back and tap, tap, tap. Then I'm going to use the same color. So this is going to kind of be our color. And I'm going to do where I see the gill. So I'm going to point my brush to that C shape. I'm using the one, I think there's two lines, but just do it over it and then clean your brush, touch it, and then blend it out. Don't go in your white of your fin. So try to just don't go too wild. Blend it in a little bit. I went on the pencil line that is closest to his mouth. So, and then we're just going to work on the other one a little bit later. So we kind of want to make sure that it's dark and then we blend it out a little bit. If you lost some of your spots, it's okay. We will just come back and add more. Now we want to add the texture on his head. So I'm going to let this dry just a moment before I go back. And I'm going to use the right side of his eye. And I'm going to make a little outline like this, like a little C shape. And then I am just, again, blending it out a little bit. Do control the water on your brush a lot because the space is so tiny. Maybe come back and add a little here. Add a little bit of a yellow cheek. Like this. Go a little bit to the bottom. Play around with the different, how they can mix with each other when it's a little bit wet. See how the watercolor effect is happening right there. Kind of let it be. I'm going to come back with a bit of my pure kind of dark blue, and I just want to drop it in there. Clean my brush, touch my towel, and then I touch the edges a bit to let them blend in more. I see this pencil line. I'm going to remember that pencil line, and then I'm going to go over that pencil line, and I'm going to just come back and add a little bit more. So you just want to have this kind of flowy, not so spotty really, more flowing from one color to another color effect. That's what you want to kind of see in this mouth top section. Use some of your blue. Be careful if you use the blue too close to the yellow, it can become very green. So that can happen. So just be careful over here, especially when you added some yellow. and then you come back with some of the brownish blue. They can touch, but don't over blend them because it may just end up that it looks a little bit green. I'm cleaning my brush. I'm going to come back with some of my pure yellow again. This is a little washed out. So all I want to do is I want to, on his top lip and bottom lip, add some yellow. Maybe a tiny bit of orange to your yellow so it's not so bright, and kind of let it blend in a bit. And then same thing, using the brown, maybe a little bit of blue, and tap, tap, tap at the top. Clean your brush, touch your towel, tap the edge so it starts flowing where it's wet, all around his eye. The bottom of his mouth, I want to have a bit of a lighter color. Where you see that pencil line, the bottom section should be a little bit darker, and then the bottom section will be a little bit lighter, and then we can add some color to this top section. Same brown and blue. So I control the water on my brush a lot, so it's not too wet, and therefore it will dry really fast. Okay, I need to let this dry. It looks a little bit weird, I know. We are not really done, so, we cannot really tell. I'm going to let that dry. The one thing I also want to do before I start with the rocks is I want to make my eye black inside. So there's like a tiny little black section like this, and don't do anything else. So your eye around it will be white and your inside is just black. And it looks like this. See how I let the water kind of do that mixing for me? Especially over here, I don't really want it to overmix too much. And it's just not completely done, so it looks a bit weird. That ugly face that we don't always love. And I'm going to let it dry. Now I want to move on to some of my rocks. You kind of want to have the same color, maybe a little bit more brown, maybe a yellow ochre can be pretty. So I'm quickly going to just zoom out so I can mix over here without like smooshing on my fish. Okay, so you want to play with colors like that's brown like this, a blue like this, maybe a yellow ochre like this. It also can just be brown with some yellow or yellow with some brown. You can even have a tiny bit of olive. My olive and purple is so mixed together. So it can be like oh my gosh, a purple olive green mixture. And the blue will make really pretty shadow areas, and you can also come with some black. So these are kind of the colors I'm going to use for my rocks. So I'm going to start 1, 1, 1, doing most of them a lot of watery idea. So I'm adding some brown and blue on my paintbrush, and your rocks can also be totally different than mine. Because I just mixed the color, I'm going to not work so much on the rocks close to me. I am going to first see what it looks like at the back. Oh yeah, that is a pretty dark color. I like it. I am outlining my front rocks, and I'm going to outline my fins without leaving it outlined like that. So then I will come with water and I will smoosh it out. The darker you make your surrounding area, you know, your background, the more your fish is going to stand out. So at the moment, it can look a little bit dull. And then we do this. And the white will be white. And it will stand out and it will look good. And then just make like a rock shape. So this can be a rock shape that kind of just looks like this. Make sure you fill it in, drop in color. Come close over here where you are behind these rocks and just make them a bit darker. And then drop in water so it can move and it can create rock-like texture. Add some of the yellow in these spots. So, or the green, so it can look like moss or something growing there. When it's wet, you can kind of play around a lot. And then over here, I don't know if there was a little rock, but I'm just gonna do something like this. And then maybe come in some light gray from this side. Maybe more watery. Clean your brush, touch your towel, pull out some color. And think of interesting rock shapes. So this one can have like a flat shape like that. Maybe drop in a little bit of blue at the top. And then let it dry. So don't do anything else over here because it's too wet, you know, in this open space. And yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Remember, we all do our own thing. But do use the watercolor, the water mixing watercolor technique to create these cool kind of shapes and texture. I'm going to let that one dry. And then I'm going to move to this big one. So now I'm going to paint with water first. And I'm just filling it in. And then I am adding some yellow ochre, some brown, maybe a little bit of blue. And I'm going to create dots like this in this wet, on this wet space. And I'm just going to see if how it dries and how I can create that texture. Not all your rocks have to be dark. Some can be a little bit lighter. Some can, or you can just all make dark ones. Come with blue, so don't just use one color. So come with blues and let it and tap, tap, tap so it can flow. And see what it looks like. We do have to go really close to the fish. So there shouldn't be any white spaces. I like to point my brush in that direction. Oops. And water will just help it flow a little bit more. And then let it dry and see what it looks like. It looks like a pretty cool rock. Okay, moving on. And it's always just a little interesting how it dries. So that's one of the things you just have to do. Let it dry, see what it looks like. moving on to, let's go to this big one. So again, decide on brown, black, blue, whatever color you want to do to make it a little darker. Outline without making it look like an outline. So, you know, this one is in front, this one is towards the back. Drop in color, clean your brush, touch your toe, and then drop, 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 and see how you blend them in. If your brush is too wet and it pushes all the paint to the side, you can do exactly the same technique on top when it's dry. But you have to wait for it to dry, or else you just mixing it in again. So brown, blue, a little bit of black, maybe a little bit of green on this one. Oh, that would be pretty. I like to use the olive green because it does have like a yellow tint to it. So for me, the yellow tint, it works for this underwater idea. So now the problem I see over here is that my fish chin and my rock is the same color. And you cannot see the difference between the two. So because it's still wet and I can drop in a little bit of color, it will not go into my fish. It will only stay on my rock because that's where I'm making a bit of a path for it to go. If my fish would have been wet, that the color would just go everywhere, but it kind of stays only where you put down water. Pretty cool. And no harsh edges. Remember, we are thinking of rocks. So I'm going to soften some of these white spots also. And maybe add a little bit of a darker bottom. And your rocks does not have to be perfect shapes, right? So you can have like a little bump. So you don't have to outline and make them so perfect. I mean, they can be those pretty like river rocks, but they can also have bumps. Yeah, I'm going to let that one dry too. So slowly but surely, we are building a whole bunch of rocks. I'm going to come down, but the idea is kind of the same. So you want to paint the back ones first and then paint the ones close to you last. So I am making another, and I kind of like this method of colors that I have going on here. So now I'm going to go to the back. So the further ones towards the background can be a little bit less defined, more kind of the same color because they are in the distance. The water is a little mucky over there. So you may not be able to see so well. And so these ones can just be blurry, dark shapes. No detail really on these ones. I still want to use the same idea from darker to light, but you don't have to worry about all the texture. So that one looks a little too dark. So I'm just going to clean my brush, touch my towel, and then see if I can just tap, tap, tap to let some of that dark color flow to the top. And then same over here. Even these ones, if they now flow into each other, I think it will be fine. No need to be so precise. And even this one. So I don't always mix big puddles of the color. I kind of mix as I go, because I feel that also gives this a different value every single time, but I still use the same color, so they will feel the same. They just don't all have exactly the same color. So I'm going to paint like this, add a little bit of the yellow ochre, maybe a bit of the light brown, and just see if I can have like a different variety here. Close to his nose, I want to come back, or his mouth. I want to come back and just see if I can make it darker, even if you try to outline it very carefully, just so your fish shape really pop. This is also how you can reshape the nose if you went a little bit crazy. And without making a solid outline, I come back and I just let it flow. We are not done with the fish, but we had to make sure that some of our layers just dry. And so we are definitely going to work on his mouth a little bit more. But now you can kind of see how the white outline is white chin is kind of standing out a bit more. So when we painted that, okay, so I am just continuing filling in some areas. Tap, tap, tap. Try not to make it exactly the same. Maybe add a little bit of black. Clean your brush, touch your towel, blend some of it out. I'm going to let it dry before I go into that one. Then I am going to do here. Maybe his belly, a little brown. Now I can come back and do that one because it should be dry for me to do this. Clean your brush, touch your towel. Make sure you touch your towel so you don't just drop a whole bunch of water in your painting when you try to paint. Blend it in a little bit. Remember, they are rocks. They are not supposed to be so perfect. This can be a little bit mucky over here. It's like, what am I looking at? I don't need to understand what I'm looking at. Let it dry, see what it looks like. Let's move on. Staying with those colors, and I'm just adding different shades. This one was way too wet. So now I just have to let it dry and before I can do anything else. And visiting all my brush, my little rocks with my brush here at the front. If it's wet, don't paint there, but same idea, dark at the bottom. And you can maybe do a few at the same time. Very uneven, don't just outline. Clean your brush, touch your towel, grab a different color. Don't forget about that olive green, that kind of looks really cool. It's more like a yellow green. You can see brush was way too wet over here. It just pushes all the things to the bottom, so it's okay. Moving on, doing more. This step doesn't have to take super long. I mean, yes, you can fuss a lot, but I want to say you want to get this out. You want to get all the spaces filled, and then you can come back and add a few darker areas, a few lighter areas. But for now, your main goal should just be to make sure that you can see different kind of rocks and you want to fill them in. And let them dry in between to actually see what they look like. So don't spend too much time. Going. And maybe you can do like a few at the same time. With paint, get some green or some yellow or some brown. Go in the tips. So now I did jump around and not just stay light to dark and full and to the background to the front. And the only reason is I need some of the things, I need them to give them time to dry. So there's absolutely no rules, even though it makes it a little bit easier to paint back to the front. You can definitely still jump and do whatever you can do when things are just too wet. Do a little here. What's in color? Do work with the flowy effect. Look how cool this one looks. So we don't want to over mix and over paint. Stay with the same paint that you mix so your rocks kind of feel the same. Sometimes I prefer a straight and a pretty edge, but sometimes it looks good if it's very uneven. So I didn't tape mine out. I'm just gonna add to it. I'm just gonna make it a little uneven. Clean my brush, touch my towel. Don't forget that tap, tap, tap can just help blend in and make extra water textures. So don't forget that. That is a really cool way to just add a little bit more texture versus stripes. And it looks more rocky. Before I forget, I am going to paint this tiny guy here. I'm going to make him a little bit light yellow brownish with, and then I'm just going to drop in a little bit of a blue. And I'm letting it dry to see what it looks like. And I keep on going, don't stop. Maybe, so now I've painted a lot here, so it's wet, moving this side. And touch paint, control the water on your brush a lot. If it's too wet, you are just going to have a very hard time. Tap, tap, tap. Maybe go here. Maybe go here. So the rocks was basically a few guidelines. You don't have to stick to that. Oh, clean your brush, drop your brush, do all the things. Throw them in. It's always so funny the boo-boos I make sometimes when I paint. I'm like, I drop my brush, I do this, but luckily then it's golden opportunities to show you how you can change that little drop of paintbrush and make it, you know, so you like your painting again. Yeah, tap, 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 get that texture down, get it all flowy. Move on because I know it dries a little bit lighter always. Here. Maybe do this one. Now this one, so some of them you can play a little bit around, but this one maybe want to have a little dark triangle shape in here. So that can be, instead of a round rock, it can maybe be a flat rock. So I'm going to do that. So I'm making like an edge and I leave a big oval space on the top. I clean my brush. I touch my towel and I want to just get a little bit of a yellowy color on the top. So it can look like more of a flat rock. By making a kind of a straight bottom dark edge over here, it creates that three-dimensional effect. And then by doing where it's touching, like in there, see where it's touching those two other rocks, it can create a, like, it makes a shadow on top of him, this flat one. Let it dry a little bit, then try to just paint over it. I know I can come back and add a little bit more. Blend, blend, blend. Tap, tap, tap. I frequently touch my towel, it's right here as I'm painting, especially if I feel it's too wet. I just touch it and I can get rid of some of that water. Oh, too wet makes a big blob. I see if I can suck it up by tapping it and then touch my towel. Some yellows. We are almost at this stage, which I love, where I invite you to pick up your painting and just look at it and see with a little bit of a squinted eye if your rocks kind of just look like a mismatch of stuff or if it really actually looks like rocks. So we're almost there, few open spaces. Remember the tap, tap, tap helps you to create texture. The water also can help you. So if it's really wet and you just drop in, and same, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, six that I still need to do. Maybe this one can just be more or less one color. And I keep on just filling in spaces, cleaning my brush, come back, tap, tap, tap to let it flow. This one will be a little bit of a lighter rock. They do not all have to have the same value, so they can be, some can be a little bit lighter. Also, maybe you don't even have to identify exactly where every rock starts and ends. Maybe the water is a little dirty. Maybe. So now I have all of them filled in. So I'm just going to work a little bit more on this one. Now I'm going to quickly zoom out for the next step. Lift yours up. I like to hold it in front of me. Oh, I've always put so many things in my book. Everything is falling out. Straight arms like this and just check it out and see, do you like your rocks? Do you need to add something? What I can see on mine, if I can give you an out zoom, is that I maybe want to add something in this section, but then this edge is a little bit light. So let me just zoom back in. I am just going to come back and do like a little tap, tap, tap right there. It was a little white. And maybe it just bothered me when I looked up and I saw it. I can still see there's light and dark, but I don't really want to see it so white, if that makes sense. And then, yes, I forgot about this section. So luckily that's when you lift it up and you notice. I'm just going to do, I'm going to give some texture in this section. So I'm just going to do like this. Maybe. Mix it up. And I'm also going to do a little bit over here. Oh, now my brush was too wet. Oi. And then I'm just going to do this. Okay. And I know I can come back because it's just paint. I can definitely come back and bring more color into it. Okay, for me, it is sometimes easier to flip my paper over to do closest to my body, to paint here versus try to paint on the top. I also like the fact that I can point my brush and follow along and make it really pretty. So flip your paper over if it's easier. If not, you definitely don't have to do it. I am doing it so if it looks upside down, or I should say that is why it is upside down. Okay, so now whatever greens you have, you want to have a mucky kind of river color. So I'm thinking something like this. And it is green and brown and blue. And the blue is what making it, the brown is what making it so ground mucky kind of color. And then, so I made a big puddle. So I have like olive green. I have a little bit of the teal green. I take a little bit of the navy blue and then some brown. And I'm mixing until I get the desired mucky color from your river. Let me just measure that. Oh yeah, see, pretty. I like it. I dip my brush into my water cup before I start painting so I can have this drop of water ready to drop. I don't know if you can see him. And then I just dropped it right there. I don't want you to do that. I want it to be watery so we can paint without making stripes. So drop in color as you go. There shouldn't be any white showing between your fish and your water. So drag that edge along. Use water, even if you dilute it a little bit. Drop in the mixture that you have. And always paint side to side with water. Even if it's upside down. You can most certainly switch to a bigger brush if you feel like it. Sometimes I like to do the smaller brush as my initial go, but you can definitely go into a bigger brush. Even if you outline, always, always, always come back and mess it up. No white spaces. Over here, it can kind of look like white spaces, but it is my light yellow that you see. So I did that. Then I can switch to a bigger brush. And I'm making more paint. And I'm painting side to side quickly before it dries. Even if you paint with water, just so it doesn't dry weird. And then mix a whole bunch more. And paint side to side on your water. Brown, blue, greens. And side to side, make it dry really cool. If your big brush have a nice point, you can definitely use your big brush from the beginning. Big brushes just have more water, it just have more paint. It just helps to make big spaces a little bit easier to paint. Side to side is helping. But it looks like water. Now, over here, where you know there could be more rocks in the background. Let me just get it in here. You can paint a little bit more spotty. I'm going to flip it over so you can just see, because I think it will be easier. It will make more sense. Flip over. Also, when it is wet, you may just have to wait for it to dry. Because even if I try to make kind of rock shapes, it's just going to be flowy. So maybe drop in color in the background. That's kind of what I mean. You can drop it in. So it doesn't have to be so smooth. The darker you make your background, then more your fish will pop out and stand out. Even though he camouflaged really well because of all my rocks. And the spots on his body. Okay, I need to let this dry because I am just moving it all the way. So, and I say this and then look, my hand just keeps on going, keeps on going. It's even hard for me to stop. Yeah, I'm going to let that dry. I'm switching to my small brush again. Now I want to do some details on my fish. So remember the purple kind of dark color we mixed that we used. Get that again. So it was the orange, red, orange, purple. My purple have a little bit of brown in it. So I'm just going to add a little brown also. Maybe a little purple. Maybe some blue. Let me check. Okay, yeah. So I mixed more or less the same color. I want to have it dark, so I don't want to dilute it a lot. I need a very strong color. So not too much water. Definitely more paint versus water. Like this. So this one. And I want to outline between his lips. I'm going to trace kind of that pencil line that I did. I cannot really see my pencil line, so now I'm just making it up. I'm going to give, there was a pencil line right here. I'm going to give a line. You can also go with a smaller brush if you want to. Remember those gills that we have? We're just going to outline it. We couldn't do this part when it was too wet because it would just flow. But now it's dry enough for us to do it. Remember there was that extra fine pencil line that was here. I'm just adding it kind of like that. And I also want to do a little bit of a I'm going to touch my towel so my brush is not so wet. I'm not going to clean it. I'm just going to touch it so it doesn't have so much paint on it. Then I'm just going to do a few little taps. Maybe like this. I'm going to clean. I'm going to touch my towel and soften some of that dark spots. These are kind of just added details that you can do. Then I want to go into yellow and I'm going to outline around my black. Be careful not to pull it out. And then as soon as that is dry, so don't make it too wet, you can come with this dark color and do around the yellow. If you want to go with a smaller brush, let me see if I can pull one quickly. I have a very small brush that's also really easy, and you can just come and do skinny lines around the eye. You can also use black. And you can just kind of work a little bit with your gills, the line. If your rock and your fish is blending too much at the bottom, take a black or this dark color, maybe not black, maybe that dark color, and just give him a faint outline. And do maybe a few little taps with your brush that's a bit drier and smaller, just to give details to your fish. So you can always come back with a black outline on his fish, on the body at the bottom. And you can make sure that it stands out, or the dark outline, maybe not black. I said that, but maybe not black. You can also shape your fish a little bit better. You can also go all the way because depends on how it dries. If it's really light, how your purple mixture dried, you can come back and just add this. And maybe do some of that black detail, blacker, darker color, like here. Especially if there's some white spaces, maybe use your tap, fill it in. And this is our cute Brook Trout. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. I'll give you a zoom in so you can see. I think I like my background. I don't think I want to add anything more, although there's like a line that I may not like. So let me just grab some paint. Oh, don't do this. This is too green. Brown. So whenever I mix a puddle and I have, like now I'm just like, I go to a new spot and I take a little bit and I go to a new spot and I mix versus trying to make this whole puddle just the color I want it, because sometimes that's just impossible. And I want it more brown. because dirty lake water or river, or wherever this trout you get these fish, not sure. And you can definitely paint like shapes to make it looks like more rocks. You can paint a little bit over some of your rocks. Now do a little wash. You can totally do that. I would definitely do this with a big brush. So they can look all muted. Perfect. And let it dry.